Hi, guys. Welcome back. And look who I have with me. Hi, Dr. Kirk. How are you?
Hi, Adam. Good. How are you?
Good. So, for anyone who missed last week, Dr. Kirk Honda, also known as Psychology in Seattle, jumped on with me to take over Master of BlackJack's channels and kind of have a live discussion for the Bottom Feeder Army. But now we're on our second episode, and I have to say, Dr. Kirk, I feel like I'm getting to know you a little bit better. I never asked you, do you prefer to be called Dr. Kirk, Dr. Kirk Honda? Is there a certain way I should address you?
I was on another podcast recently, and someone from The Bachelorette, I'm actually forgetting her name now, which is terrible, or The Bachelor, but she called me Mr. Dr. Kirk Honda, which I thought was funny.
Mr. Dr. Kirk.
Whatever you want to call me is fine, but I think Dr. Kirk is probably easiest to say.
Okay, so we'll stick with Dr. Kirk. All right, so Dr. Kirk, I just want to start off by saying thank you again for coming back. And I think we had a great discussion last week, but today's topic I'm even more excited about. So today, I guess I don't even know how to dance around this, but the topic is pop culture or even social media basically being the ultimate influencer. So we talk about influencers, right? And we know that in this generation, influencers are they're super highly paid. What in your eyes, how would you describe an influencer?
Yeah, I mean, they've been around for a long time. I mean, Michael Jordan was an influencer in the 90s as a product, Nike and all the things that he was involved with. So influencers as a broader topic have been around for a long time, but it's on steroids now in that people will be able to post like everything that they're doing and get paid to just post that they're at a restaurant or that they went to a hotel or something. So it is definitely, much more prevalent now. So yeah, that's my layperson's description of an
influencer. Okay. So I guess my next question is, from the Michael Jordan era to where we are now, obviously more people have the opportunity to become influencers, but ultimately we're just shaping the future generations, right? Because if we took social media out of it and this aggressive of an influencer, what would life look like for future generations? I mean, because if you think about 50 years ago, right, nobody had their hands on their heads into their phones, and it was just a completely different time.
Yeah. Well, as with any social influence mechanism, we have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis to some extent, and also the global effect of it. And there's a lot of philosophy and think pieces and research going into what we're doing to ourselves now. Are we heading in a bad direction? Are we heading in the same direction we've always been heading? Do we not know what's happening? Is it going in various different directions? Yeah, I don't study this as much as other people do, so I can't really summarize it very well. But I will say that I am a social influencer under that definition, the broad definition. I'm not one of the classic social influencers, right? But I am in that I'm on Instagram and people recommend book, they'll ask me for book recommendations. I'll recommend the book recommendation. They'll buy it. I will sell merch, and other kinds of things. And so on a small level, I just have to admit that I'm like that. And that's part of my sort of life. So
Right.
I'll just say that as a caveat. But the key is what are we going to do with the influence? So what I try to do with my influence is I try to be critical, look critically at what influence I'm having on people. And I try to think, well, what am I hoping for? What do I think is good for us as individuals and families and societies? And I believe that compassion is something that more people deserve and deserve to feel for other people. And so I'm trying to influence in that way. Of course, you have other influencers that are perhaps going in the opposite direction. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Do you feel, okay, so can we talk about, I was watching some of your videos, and I've noticed that here lately you have been you've been doing your Therapist Reacts videos for Darcy and Stacy. And I know I watched one of them for Darcy's proposal. and you were going through and you were talking about how therapy over time could have probably been great for her and she would maybe be in a different place in her life. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I was referring to was early in the season, she went to a therapy session. And from the looks of it, it was just one session.
Right.
And so I was so excited, and that she went to therapy. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I'm thinking long-term therapy, a lot of self-discovery, a lot of healing, a lot of self-awareness. And then it was one session, it looked like, and it didn't look like it did anything. In fact, it seemed like it almost just reinforced her defenses, which
Right.
really shoot herself in the foot. And so, yeah, that's what I was talking about was like, please, Darcy, I don't know about you. I think we talked about this last time. I've grown to care about her as a human being. She doesn't know who I am, but
You have like some compassion towards her watching.
I want her to be happy, and I want her to get her needs met in the same way that I want anyone's. So I would wish that she would go to therapy more so that could help that.
But couldn't this, like, maybe let's, instead of using the word pop culture, let's say maybe social media, couldn't social media and how we use it in today's time completely have changed the direction of her life for the worse?
Right.
Because without it, she wouldn't have met these Eastern European men, right? I mean, there's a lot to do with this.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the speculation is her life worse off because of social media? I don't know. That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. Do you think that that's why? I mean, like, where do you think she would be if we didn't have social media?
Well, because I was thinking about it today when I was thinking about this whole topic, and I just realized I've been on social media for 17 years and I'm 27. So it kind of blew my mind that I was like, wow, I grew up in this generation of, this is my generation. I kind of grew up with social. I didn't grow up with video games too, but I didn't like going out a whole lot. I like to jump on AOL and get on AIM and make a fun screen name. And my fiance, who's 10 years older than me, he grew up in a gym and actually went on to become a pro athlete. So I think I wish somebody would have taken the computer away from me and kind of, you know what I mean? So,
well, what are the negative effects? I mean, you seem like a well-adjusted guy.
Okay, so that's a good turnaround, but I feel like because now I just know being like kind of immersed into the internet, and I'm okay to be super social here, and this doesn't bother me. But then sometimes I notice where we'll go out in a group setting with a bunch of people, and I act awkward and weird because that's just, I'm not used to being in that big group setting, whereas Jason, is.
Right. Yeah, okay. So that's a negative effect, is some social unfamiliarity or anxiety or awkwardness or something. I'll tell you that existed before social media, awkwardness and social anxiety. I'm 49, so I was alive well before social media, and can remember that life wasn't perfect before social media. So,
well, before social media, for example, like okay, then this is a good example. Then when you grew up and you didn't have social media, what would have been some of the common things that you would have done?
Yeah. Yeah. What did you do before?
Yeah. I mean, did we play in a band? Did you,
yeah, all that. I still play in a band, actually. But there are, okay. So I think the overall thing that I'll say is that undoubtedly there are negative effects from social media. It's hard to know causation versus correlation, but according to the research and according to my anecdotal observation, there are effects such as increased loneliness. That anxiety that might have increased socially because of people staying inside more and not having in-person, interactions. Because when you're online interacting, you can control a lot more of what happens. You can think about what you want to say. You can take things down. You can take the best photograph of yourself and that kind of thing. Whereas in person, you just have to live with the stupidity that you are, and get acclimated to that. And so because of that increase in unfamiliarity and anxiety, there seems to be an effect of increased loneliness, increased suicidality, increased depression, increased social anxiety. That seems to be pretty clear. But the solution is, in my mind, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's out there. So how do we use social media in a way that actually enhances our lives instead of gets in the way? I think that's the key.
But does everybody have the capability of doing that? Because somebody like Darcy, and again, looking at it from a compassionate perspective, you see her and she has to be, most of her photos are Facetune, so she edits a lot of her photos. They've come up in conversation on episodes where she really tries to enhance herself and kind of keep up with what she thinks is maybe this ideal image. I feel like that affects you more when you're at home and you're stuck inside and you're staring at this all day, comparing yourself to that. And I guess what my question is it possible that not everybody, even in future generations, are going to be able to adapt to social media?
Well, so I think the broader answer I'll have is that it seems clear from multiple angles that both Darcy and Stacy did not receive enough love and attention when they were growing up in the right ways, either because of their parents, the divorce, their parents' personalities, the stress their parents are going through, the fact that they moved around a lot and didn't have friends that they could really feel secure with, and they just sort of insulated themselves away from that and felt ostracized in a lot of ways. Who knows? There's just a lot of speculation. There could be a lot of other things that we just don't know about that could happen to them.
Right.
So, do they have issues that are outside of social media around that? It seems so, but it's always speculative because I'd have to talk to them and assess them and figure that out. And then as a solution, do they seem to turn to things that might not get their needs met, such as the way they look and social media, as a way to try to make up for that lack of love and attention or that lack of self-esteem? Do they seem to do that? It seems so, but again, it's hard to know. Like there's two, just go with me on two possibilities. One is say Darcy goes to therapy for 5 years and she really gets to know herself and she heals from her pain and she cultivates good relations. Her and Georgie stay together the rest of that time. Okay. They don't fight. She learns that someone can love her, and so let's say that she heals from those traumas. And at the end of that time, she can say into the camera, you know what? I had my issues. I worked on it. And I now know that I deserve love. And I still have bouts of doubt sometimes, but I know what to do. And I look back at myself back then and I just think, you know what? Part of the reason why me and Tom and me and Jesse didn't work is because of me. Part of it was them, but part of it was me. It's just some kind of, who knows, statement around that.
Right.
And then she also still loves to look great and loves social media. Could that happen? Sure. Or could at the end of that time, could she say, and you know what? A big part of my running the rat race, the constant treadmill of trying to get ahead of my traumas, involved trying to look perfect in my mind and social media. And I learned that I just had to get rid of that whole thing or do it in a whole different way that really valued myself and wasn't in a constant effort of trying to get the likes and the wows online. And I've learned that was just a part of my dysfunction. I could see either happening. So it really just depends on what happened for her.
Well, and it makes sense what you're saying. And I think that this even applies to, and I used her as another example because I saw that you covered her documentary. This applies to Paris Hilton too, because even though a lot of people, and stay with me here, I guess, but even though a lot of people think that her life was so amazing and she grew up so wealthy, she's explaining it in a different way. And she said that she knew when she got out of Provo Canyon School, she was going to take control over her life and kind of build that fairy tale that she always wanted, but never felt like she had. So I guess, yeah, but technically she would just be still living in that space because it kind of seems like Paris has not really aged in her mind, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, with her, it's harder to tell because I don't know that much about her. Frankly, 99% of what I know about her is from that documentary, and that's pretty short.
Right.
So yeah, that one's harder for me to comment on.
Okay. Well, Dr. Kirk, I have a few callers in here that have some questions for you. Do you mind if I start bringing some of them up?
Sounds great.
All right. Let's see who we can bring up first. I'll go with Ava. Hi, Ava.
Oh,
Hi, Eva.
hi.
How are you?
I just want to say, sorry. I just want to say, oh my gosh. I've been watching Dr. Kirk for months, and like you've helped me a lot.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a huge fan of you.
Well, now I'm a fan of you because you must be in line with compassion and love and self-awareness, and that's a great thing.
Well, thank you for calling, Ava.
So, actually, I started watching you because of Darcy. Like I've been a fan of 90 Day Fiance, God, for like 4 years or something.
Yeah.
And actually, like even though I'm very young, Darcy kind of reminds me of how I used to be like. So so when I saw like your reactions, I thought it was like really interesting.
Okay.
Like for Darcy and stuff.
Well, Ava, we're going to go ahead and start cycling through. We have a lot of callers.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. But thank you for calling.
Fine. All right. Okay.
All right. You have a lot of fans, Dr. Kirk. A lot of people, you help a lot of people. That's why I think I like talking with you, because even what you just said to Ava, I feel like I fall in line with that too. It's just I kind of lead with a compassionate foot. So I really appreciate that about you.
Yeah. This is interesting because right now, this is the first time that I'm actually getting face to face with some of the people. It's, there's a lot of comments and emails and stuff, but it's a completely other thing to actually see face to face. I don't use this program that you're using where people can actually just call in. Like maybe I should do more of that. It's pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you think it's pretty cool. And I'm sure sometimes, too, when we get people on, they get so excited because they don't think that they're going to be picked to come on. And then they're like, holy cow, it's Dr. Kirk. But let's see what our next caller thinks.
Okay.
All right. Hi, Dana.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
We got her.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Hi, Adam.
We hear you.
Hi,
How are
Dr.
you?
Kirk. Doing good.
Hi.
Dr. Kirk, I just wanted to ask you about one of my thoughts about this whole thing are like the generational effects. Like with Darcy and Stacy, especially Darcy's daughters, they're becoming influencers. And I think about the generational effects. I was telling Adam the other day, I have a teenage daughter and I have young teenage nieces. And for instance, my newly teenage niece already has 3,000 followers. She has very few pictures up on Instagram. And I looked on her followers, and a good number of those followers are men. And to me, I think in every school, there should be a class about it. The do's, the don'ts, protecting yourself. When people reach out and say they want to collab with you, what does that really mean? How to keep yourself safe? And it just really concerns me about the future and what it means generationally for the kids, because it's going to become more and more and more.
Would you, Dr. Kirk, actually, I mean, do you agree with that? Like that it's becoming that big of a part of our lives that we should have an actual class teaching people the ins and outs of it?
Yeah, there are so many things that I wish that schools would focus on as well. There's nothing wrong with math and science, language and history, of course, but I wish that they focused on attachment theory more, on emotional
intelligence.
Emotional intelligence, how to communicate, how to love yourself, societal influences on your self-hatred, which I think is proof, true for anyone really. And also how to navigate social media as a part of that. And, whenever we have new technology, it always takes us a while to figure out as a society what we're going to do with it. The atomic bomb comes out and we immediately, screw it up in a lot of different ways. And we're still kind of dealing with that, but social media comes out and it seems like it's great. And I remember when the internet was first coming around and when social media first came around, I thought, oh, this is perfect. This is only going to be good.
Yeah.
It just seemed that way. And of course now we realize it's not, but yeah, kids, it is an interesting question. And generally speaking, education is definitely an answer, right? You can educate parents, you can educate kids. But I also wonder if there shouldn't be rules around this. We have rules, for example, about kids and the sort of sexual behaviors that are allowed, so to speak. And we developed that because we learned that without those rules, bad things can happen. And so it's the same with social media. We just think like, well, we'll figure it out case by case basis. Everyone's allowed to figure it out for themselves. But it seems that attitude results in a lot of people being harmed by it. And there's no need for it, that kids don't need social media to grow and love themselves and have relationships and learn and have fun and all these kinds of things. So if they don't need it, then regulation. But what do? Do you have laws that say you can't be on social media? You can't have a phone until you're 18 years old?
Well, but then just to kind of piggyback off this really quick, though, I had a roommate who lived with me in Los Angeles when I was 19 and she was 20. And she said to me, hey, Adam, I'm trying to get my modeling career going. This is really important for me. I had this guy reach out online who said he's a photographer here in LA. And then I was like, does he have a website? And she's like, no, but he says that he'll shoot for free in exchange to build his portfolio and he'll come straight to the house and he'll do it here. And I was like, what? You can't bring this guy into our house. So I explained to her that this was extremely dangerous. And what ended up happening was she waited for me to go to work. She invited this photographer to our house that she didn't know. And then the guy came intoxicated or under some kind of influence and refused to leave the apartment. So she had to call the police on him. Wow. So it really is. And it's so dangerous. And I think the most important thing would be to just teach people you don't know who you're talking to. I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? Is we don't know who we're communicating with. And also even maybe deeper, Dr. Kirk, maybe we don't know the monster we're building in ourselves by getting so involved in social media.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about like 5-year-olds, we don't say, well, we all understand that there's child abduction and abuse that happens.
And grooming.
And grooming. And we don't take an approach of, well, let's educate 5-year-olds and let them figure it out for themselves. No, we just say, no, 5-year-olds can't go to the mall by themselves.
Right.
5-year-olds can't go on the internet and do meetups with people. We're just like, no, that's ridiculous. And so education is definitely a part of it for sure. But I wonder if more strict regulations need to happen to protect people from this sort of thing. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The problem is you have too many adults pretending to be something they're not online. Pretending to be teenagers, pretending to be kids, pretending to be photographers or directors or what have you. And then, recently I've also noticed so many people drowning in fertility and aggression and that kind of thing online. And I'm thinking to myself, look at these people literally wasting so much of their time on internet wars,
Right.
Psychological wars.
Well, that's all over YouTube too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dana, thank you for calling. I appreciate it. And I think we're going to take some more questions.
Anyway, sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. All right. All right, Dr. Kirk, ready for our next one?
Yep. I mean, do you think that social media enhances your life?
See, now it depends because I don't really use social media unless it's for, I have Facebook, which allows me to keep up with my family, and that's all I essentially do on it. And then I have Instagram, which I post maybe once a year on. And now here recently, I'll post stories just to push out my YouTube account. But no, really, I could do without it. I just don't know what my life would look like without it.
Yeah.
So I think that's easier said than done because I say I could do without it, but then maybe stick me in a third world country with no phone, no internet, and I might be like, I can't do this because I'm so spoiled on it. So
Yeah.
I just don't know if it enhances my life.
Well, you don't seem to use it very much. Do your friends that use it a lot, people your age, do you think it makes their life better or worse?
Well, see, here's the thing. I have a lot of friends, especially back in LA and here too, who are in fact influencers, who have the codes, who are like 15% off here, and they make a lot of money doing it. But then also I see how amazing it looks on their profiles and I see how much fun it looks like they're having, but then I have conversations with them and they're stressing out. They feel like they have to keep looking a certain way, or they have to keep pumping out content. They have to keep up with what they think is like the end all be all, but that there really isn't an end all be all because there's always going to be somebody with more followers, more kind of influence. And I think that's what everybody's trying to achieve. So I just feel like it's kind of something that's like running away from you that you're never going to catch up to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you think that they're suffering more than if they were at a regular job trying to run the rat race?
Kind of in a way, only because I feel like a regular job in a sense, and you can actually, and I'm not saying that being a doctor is a regular job at all, but I'm saying when you put yourself in a job that might not be, but you're also in front of a camera too, because you do this. But for, let's say like someone who's a lawyer, or someone who, let's use a lawyer, goes to work every day. They don't do a lot of entertainment stuff. They're not on screen a whole lot. I feel like for them, they don't. No, I guess because they have their own pressures. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a fool because I understand that they have their own pressures with that. I just don't feel like it weighs on you judging yourself as harshly with those kind of does that make sense? I feel like
it does. It's tempting to say that, but I don't think it's true.
Yeah, now that I'm saying it, I kind of feel like an idiot saying it.
Well, I think that what you're feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that social media and the internet is particular in that there's this constant need for followers and clicks and thumbs up, and it's different than being a lawyer, because with a lawyer you might have a case for like 3 months and there isn't this constant like hope of getting thumbs up, because you just go to work and you do your job and you don't have to think about feedback as often than when you're online.
Right.
And it's an interesting question. I don't know, but humans know how to make themselves suffer, and social media didn't invent that.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I like that. All right. Are we ready for your next one?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see who we have here. Hi, RT.
Good morning from Sydney. Dr. Kirk, I thought I'd just let you know that you have a wide audience down here in Sydney, Australia.
Oh.
And in particular, Adam knows this, I'm a high school teacher, so I'm currently hiding in the hallway before the bell rings. Just out of pure curiosity. So it kind of sounds like we might be ahead of you guys in terms of digital awareness and so forth, because we do have programs and embedding programs within our school system to teach our students how to deal with social media and be more resilient and those sorts of things. But I'm just curious more along the lines of technology addiction, because that's something I'm struggling with. Most of the counsellors and so forth that we deal with advocate a more hardline approach where you remove the devices and you take things away. But obviously dealing with teenagers, when you do that, the anger that comes out tends to be quite violent, and then the parents can't deal with it and therefore give in. Would you have another approach you can suggest?
Well, yeah. So just to comment a little bit on what you said earlier, in my area, teachers and schools are addressing social media as well. I just don't think enough, personally. And I don't know about what's happening in Sydney, but I feel like there needs to be like an hour a day from kindergarten to 12th grade just dedicated to a variety of things: emotional intelligence, social media, mental health, all those things.
I agree.
And so until we get there where it's literally an hour a day for their entire school career, I'm not going to be satisfied. So there's that. But in terms of the question about addiction, yeah, I mean, one way of looking at it is that we are giving kids heroin and then being upset at them for using heroin. And because we understand that phones in a variety of ways can be absolutely addictive, meaning that it becomes compulsive. So when you see a kid, when you take away their screen and they get angry at you, there's two main ways of looking at it. One is that they're just upset. Whenever a kid is upset at you for disciplining them, they're going to express that displeasure. And, that's just going to happen. They're going to be unhappy with you. You're the bad guy because you're taking away the phone. The other possibility is that they're addicted, meaning that they are compulsively, oriented towards their phone, and they don't really have much control over that. And to just take away the phone doesn't address the larger issue, and also doesn't address the issue that you were the person who gave them the phone to begin with, or you're the person who allowed them to have the phone to begin with, or as a society. Or, we were the people that didn't put regulations on children's phones to make sure that the apps that they have access to and the things that they have access to aren't going to put them at risk of addiction. In the same way that we don't let kids smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol, why would we let kids have this sort of thing? We don't let kids gamble, for example, and there's a reason for that. And yet phones have just sort of, wiggled their way into our lives and become normalized. And there is an issue there for sure. But most kids are not addicted in the clinical sense, compulsive towards their phone. They're just they just like their phone a lot, But yeah, it's definitely an issue.
I think you're right. I think what I'm coming up across is, I suppose, lack of knowledge from parents about technology themselves. And just to give you some context, I work with some of the most socially, economically and educationally disadvantaged students within our geographical area. So I suppose when I say addicted, it generally is they've got a diagnosis of the fact that they are addicted, and it is means. But as I keep saying, it's that recommendation that we just remove the device altogether, and making them go cold turkey seems to result in violent outbursts, which is then dangerous for everybody else. It's a hard one.
Well, I can't imagine. I mean, when cell phones first became prevalent, originally in my area, schools said they had a no cell phone policy, that kids could not even have a cell phone on their person. And if it was seen, it was immediately confiscated. Which made sense to me, because I'm like, why would a kid need a cell phone at school? There's no reason why they need that. I mean, I grew up we didn't have cell phones. We couldn't text our parents in the middle of the day, and we got along fine. So but it slowly becomes normalized. And at some point when I wasn't paying attention in my area anyway, all the schools, they just like, yeah, kids have their cell phone, and parents demand it because they want to be able to contact their kids in the middle of the day. And I'm like, you're putting in, and then you're pressuring the teachers to somehow figure out what to do with that, how to teach the kids and keep them under control and to keep them off their phones. That is just like ridiculous. I just find that to be way too much pressure on teachers.
All right, well, I better go because the bell's going to ring. But it was lovely to talk to you both, and hopefully I'll see you again next week.
All right. Thank you, RT. Dr. Kirk, I have a question for you. So we're talking about how technology can be addicting, and I'm not saying that you have an addiction at all, but correct me if I'm wrong. You had a moment where you actually broadcasted live for 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you do that without kind of having some sort of like, I mean, what do you broadcast for 12 hours about, first of all?
Yeah. Well, it was our 12th year anniversary. And so as a stunt, we did a 12-hour live stream. And me and Humberto, the other person on the podcast, my co-host. And yeah, you know, what did we talk about for 12 hours? Well, I prepared a lot of stuff, a lot of lists, you know, top 12 movies, this kind of thing. And so Humberto wrote 12 songs, original songs, and sang like 30 seconds for each song. And we just, I don't know, we played a lot of games, and it just went by really fast, which was weird. But the question of, you know, what people focus on a lot of times when it comes to social media and phones is there's this immediate kind of feeling of like, it's a bad thing, right? It's like social media, influencers, phones, screens, particularly for kids, it feels bad to us. And then we very quickly just draw this conclusion of like, well, we just got to get rid of the screens. And of course, that's never going to happen.
Right.
The broader question is everyone has needs. Everyone has physical needs and emotional needs that are very important to us. And when we don't get those needs met, bad things happen. When we don't get our emotional needs met, our social needs met, our self-esteem needs met, we get depressed, anxious, lonely, suicidal, angry, you know, politically extremist. You know, there's a lot of bad that we parent our kids bad when we don't feel like we're getting our needs met. We distrust other people. There's just a whole host of problems that are pretty obvious. And so how do our phones either enhance or interfere with those needs? So for me, I have needs to socialize with Humberto. I have a need to feel like I accomplished something. I have needs to entertain. You know, my need is to live my purpose, which is to try to make the world a better place. And so doing a podcast for 12 hours on YouTube is in line with that. You know, it was a positive time. It was interesting. It was, you know, lots of sort of interactions. And so through that 12 hours, I was getting my needs met. And I was also trying to enhance the world in some way, either just by being entertaining. But if I was somehow ignoring other needs, or it was interfering with my needs, like my needs for attachment, my needs for self-esteem, and I was just running this rat race of just like, oh, please love me, I'm going to do 12 hours on YouTube, and I get a little bit of love, and and then I wake up the next day, you know, well, that's a different.
That'd be unhealthy.
That comes from a different place, right? So we can't look at a behavior or a machine like a phone and know if it's destructive or enhancing or neutral in someone's life. We have to know the holistic picture.
So one more question, if you don't mind, before I bring up another caller. Would you say that after 12 years of streaming and doing these podcasts and just building this community that you're somewhat addicted to it at all? Or do you feel like you could walk away from it at any time and that's not something that you necessarily have to survive in your life?
Yeah, good question. So we have to define addiction. So the clinical word is a little bit ambiguous, but generally speaking, it's another word for compulsion, or physical addiction, or, you know, physical dependence is another sort of branch of it. But if we're just sticking to the habitual pattern, the habit forming pattern of it, meaning that someone starts to go gambling, they think about gambling all the time, they have to go every day, they lose more and more money, they try to stop, they can't help it, they always go back, you know, and they try to hide it, you know, the whole pattern that is very common to addiction and compulsions. Am I doing that with this? Well, I mean, you know, you could, I guess, from an outsider make an argument of that, but not for me. I know my needs, and my involvement on the podcast and on YouTube enhances my life in a lot of ways. It provides meaning. Like I said, I'm trying to spread the word of compassion and understanding and self-awareness. And I believe that I'm doing that, in my little tiny little way, and I feel good about that. Are there problematic elements of my relationship with social media? Absolutely. You can't, if you're involved on the level that I am, you can't not have some problems like, I don't know, having it define your life or having it define my life so much that it replaces other ways that are more enriching in my life, like actually just slowing down, hanging out with my wife or friends or family, or just, doing a hobby that doesn't have to do with trying to get good feedback. Is it interfering with that? Yeah, it does sometimes. Is that the definition of addiction? I'm guessing in some people's mind it is, but not for me.
Wow. Wow. What an answer. Okay. All right, Dr. Kirk. I appreciate your answer. No, it completely makes sense. You broke it down. It's true. I feel like everybody has their kind of idea of addiction. And I wouldn't consider this an addiction of yours. I was just curious in your mind what you thought. But also I could see, what you mean. Even if I did YouTube for the next 10, 20 years of my life, I could see where there would be moments that I might not necessarily be able to do something that I enjoy, because this would take away from that. Like for you, you said you're in a band and you play.
I play guitar and I sing.
All right. So you play guitar, and exactly. And it's like, if you weren't doing this, you wouldn't be, helping so many people, but then you would be able to enjoy yourself and enjoy the things that you love to do. It's just you got a give and take, right? Just finding a healthy balance.
Yeah. Healthy balance. So when, a lot of people drink alcohol, how do we differentiate between those that have a problem from those who do have a problem? Well, it's a case by case basis, and beyond a certain threshold, we can usually see it pretty clearly. Someone who drinks once every couple of weeks, has a couple glasses of wine at dinner with their friends, is that a problem? Could be, but not likely. Hard to know. So with social media, everyone just take inventory of that. Is it getting in the way of your life? Is it enhancing your life? How is it harmful? Is it all the above? What do you need to do to adjust it to make it more, to make sure you get your needs met in all the ways that you can get your needs met? Those are all questions we have to ask ourselves.
All right. Well, are you ready for our next caller?
Yep.
All right. Let's bring her on. Hi, Dorit.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Dr. Kurt.
Hi.
So, getting back to Stacy and Darcy, their liking of foreign men goes back many, many years. They both married Eastern European men, and I believe Darcy's ex-husband is Hungarian. So it's not something that has recently transpired to be on 90 Days and have their own show. They just like foreign men. For what reason? Who knows?
Okay. So it wasn't social media. You're saying that they were marrying Eastern European men before social media came into effect and all of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And as far as social media, my daughter, I got her a computer when she was very young, but I policed and tracked everything she did on it. And if there was something I didn't like, I would disconnect the computer and ground her for a month. I worked many hours. I was a stations operations manager, and I had to work through a lot of nights. But I had my friends befriend her on Facebook and keep track of what she was posting. So on the nights that I was working, she posts, "Party at my house, mom's at work." Well, being that I was upper management, I was able to leave the office. And I did a surprise attack on her way too many times till she stopped it. But she lived with me until she was 25, and I never stopped policing her, to the point that she has a disdain for social media. She's hardly on it. She laughs at me that I'm on YouTube. I'm a little bit addicted, I will admit. And she has an Instagram account for her work. She's a hair color specialist and educator, and that's the only thing she posts on Instagram. She barely posts anything on Facebook.
So you drilled it out of her.
I drilled it at her. Let me tell you, I'm a tough Israeli. I knock her, two sides to I don't know where. She got out of hand.
Well, it sounds like you kept her safe though. So
I had to, I wasn't home a lot. And when they say it takes a village to raise a child, I wouldn't have been able to do it without my friends policing her Facebook because I was working all the time and I couldn't keep an eye on her every minute of the day and night. But the parents need to be more proactive and see what their children are doing on the computer. And it seems that they're very lackadaisical about it and don't pay attention. They're like too busy in their own lives and they're not paying attention to what their children are doing.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, not all parents, of course, but it is something that I agree that on average, there's a drift towards normalization of children having, at least to some extent, unlimited access of what's on the internet, which I don't even recommend for adults. So, yeah, we need to do something about that.
Absolutely. And hopefully parents will be a little bit more proactive when they're hearing and seeing a lot of bad things that are going on in social media. It's scary. It really is very scary. As a mother, it's very scary.
It is scary. Well, thank you, Dorit, for calling.
Thank you, sweetie. I miss you.
Come see us anytime.
Bye. Bye, Dr. Kirk.
Bye.
All right. Well, Dr. Kirk, we took a few callers today. I don't think we can take everybody in the room, but hopefully that means that we can steal you back in the future. That way, more people have the opportunity to talk with you, because I think, again, your mission is to touch people and just spread compassion. And I feel like when people call in, they just get so excited to have this moment. So I just appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone else does too.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This has been an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I hope it was, I don't know. I think, I hope that my hope for people is that we can look at our own lives and our children's lives, of course, and just try to be holistic around our needs and how social media can enhance our needs and how it might be getting in the way.
Right. So then kind of not just go so far left or so far right, like it's the best thing ever, or just lop it out, but find, again, a healthy balance of how to incorporate it into our lives, because it's not going anywhere.
Right. Exactly.
I like that. All right, Dr. Kirk. Well, I appreciate you joining us today. If anyone's living under a rock, your YouTube channel is Psychology in Seattle. I'm a huge fan now. So again, thank you so much. And hopefully we can see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. All right. Thanks, Dr. Kirk. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. Dr. Kirk was amazing. Thank you again so much. Wow. This is super insightful, deep. I feel like so much more dimension to these conversations than just doing a recap for like the family Chantel or Darcy and Stacy, and it really does help. I feel like it helps touch people, almost like when I have Fem Tarot come on my page and she does the tarot read. I see where these different shows help people, and it makes me just want to keep doing YouTube. So just like Dr. Kirk Honda, it touches me too. So thank you guys so much. I love you guys. I appreciate you watching. And also to the Bottom Feeder Army, thanks guys for letting me host the show for you. And for Master of BlackJack, you're the best. And the rest of you, see you next time. Bye guys.